All right, everyone. Welcome to the Akin Merino Network, and we have a show for you today. We are going to be talking about mental health in Africa, Nigeria particularly, and why we need training. So we will have a conversation around that. I have with me here Adebimpe Oshinoga, who is our head of operation internationally. And then we have Olayemi Awoeyo, who is our technical graphic. What is your position? Technical graphic coordinator.
Is the head of our technical unit.
Okay. So we're here and we're just having a conversation. We want to talk to you about the importance of mental health training, especially in a place where there's not much regulation around that. All right, and so being paid, will be asking the questions, and we'll I'll be in the hot seat today. So being paid, I call her Bims, by the way. Bims, go ahead. Oh, she's frozen. It looks like she's frozen. Okay, well, you're
Okay,
frozen. You're
my
frozen for a
network,
minute.
yeah, my network sort of froze up.
Okay.
Um, so hello everybody once again, a hello from me. So let's go right to the questions. Our very first question, Dr. Marino, is about you. Um, can you please tell us about your journey into the mental health field? I mean, as a professor of psychology, you could be anything, you could go anywhere. Why mental health? What's your journey like?
Okay, so thank you. I was telling you before. I said I don't like talking about myself. So this is not a question I enjoy, but I'll try. Basically, so let me tell the story. I was in education, or I am in education. I started as a middle school teacher. My first job was a seventh grade teacher at a private school, and then I went into the public school, and I taught that. During my years of teaching middle school, which I did for about a decade, uh, one of the things, actually, I remember the first time I went for a job interview, for the job interview at the public schools. And I told them, give me your worst kids, like the ones with the bad behaviors. Like those are the kids I want to help. I want to change the world. So my first group of kids were what we call alternative kids, and those were students who were been. I had students in my class who were gang members, who were drug addicts, who had dropped out. So I had a mix of students who I had to work with. And I had one in particular. I'll never forget her. She would come in. And this were 15, 14, 14-year olds, you know. Um, and she would come to school every day smelling like she just had sex, every day. And finally one day I just had a conversation with her, and people were talking about it. And so I was having this conversation with this young girl. How are you? What's going on? And I built a relationship with all of them at this time. So they protected me. And I protected them. And so she was sexually abused. She had been sexually abused since she has been 2 years old. Since she was 2 years old, she had been sexually abused, and so she just figured that was how to live. So she had, by the time she was 14 years old, she had at least 200 people who she had sex with. Some of them had forced her into it. Some of them, she just decided that's the way to go. So I was dealing with all of these issues in class. I had people who were gang members who were in the class. I had people who were such distressed places in that particular class. So without any training, I was still trying to work with them. I worked, trying to help them and take care of as much as I could take care of, right? And I found out that I just loved doing that. I loved working with people, empowering them. And so all through my decade of teaching K through 12, I would spend either my lunchtime or after school listening to problems, trying to trash stuff. So I thought one day, look, I better go get training for this. And so even though I had my master's in education, I went back and to do a PhD in psychology. And so that was how this whole journey started for me.
Oh wow, that is really really powerful. It's a very powerful story. It really brings together. You know, I was talking to someone and I was like, well, I was talking to one of our proposed students, and I was telling her that look, the heart for us is not necessarily the fact that people are acquiring the knowledge, but the heart for us is that we have a how do you say that there's a particular word I'm looking for is lost to me now. You know, you just have that mass of people using the knowledge. So it's really not about you knowing about it, but you actually doing something with
Yeah.
it in the mental health space, you know.
Transforming. We want to
Yeah,
transform the
exactly.
mental health landscape. And I need to just before you ask me the next question, this I think has to just follow what I just said about like why Africa, for example. Why am I interested in this? And I remember coming
That is the next
as the
question I was
next
going to
question.
ask. Yeah.
Eh, because what then happened in the mental health in the mental health space here in the United States, I then went into higher ed. I've done everything from director of clinical training to program chair to dean of schools to leading the universities and leading two universities. I've done all of those things. I'm also a mental health commissioner for in my county here. But so I started going back to Nigeria, and as I was going, I was talking to people who were calling themselves mental health specialists. You know, I was having this conversation because I was so excited to see all these mental health specialists because, you know, as you know, we don't have too many people in the field who are trained. So when I saw mental health specialists, I started having those conversations. I actually wanted to have a roundtable with these people. But once we started having those conversations, I realized that people were taking like emotional intelligence courses, certificates, and then that's all they took. And then they'll call themselves mental health specialists, or they would have had an anger management training, and then they'll call themselves mental health specialists. Now, I am coming from a place where I train psychologists. I train PhD students and master level students for MFTs and masters in marriage, family, and therapy, in clinical psychology, and PhD candidates. So I'm coming from a place where training is important, right? So when I'm hearing people say things like, "Oh wow, I'm a mental health specialist," no, you're not a mental health specialist. You are a certified anger management specialist. Does that make sense? Or you
Yeah.
are a what's the emotional intelligence specialist. But
Specialist.
when we talk about mental health, you must have gone through the training, a mental health training, in order for you to call yourself that. So this is was the journey in bringing in actually saying, okay, let's train people in Africa. Let's train Africans in a way that they don't have to go to a um, necessarily do a 2 year program for the master's or even go to a PhD. What if we could do an accelerated training for people that includes everything, the foundations? It's like you're trying to build a house, Bibbs, and then you don't have a foundation and you're just putting stuff up, or you have a horrible foundation. What happens? That house is going to crash.
Come down. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we have done is we're trying to build a foundation of what is it that is mental health and what is trauma and all of these things that we're doing. So we put in theories, we do ethics, we train in cultural diversity, and then we do all kinds of diagnostic interventions for them, an assessment. And we even talk, so we've developed courses that if you take them, you can actually call yourself a mental health specialist because you would have gone through the foundational, and then you will go into all of the other areas that you want to go into. So that's what we do. That's what we're about. We want a trained populace. We want a trained populace. We don't want a populace that's just saying, oh, I'm a mental health specialist. No, I want you to be able to stand, with someone who already has a degree but still know what you're doing. That's what ours is all about.
All right. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I hear you say training is important. I hear you, talk about some of the things, but there's before we enter into the um, prerequisites and the requirements for this training, one thing that we found out, especially, I mean, I also handle student affairs. And then after the course, people come in and say, wow, for the amount you're charging, for this training, um, they don't find it like that elsewhere. What drives you to keep training people? What drives you, with respect to affordable care, mental health training care? Yeah, what drives that? What drives that?
Look, what drives that? What's driving it right now is just it's the need to give back. That's that the need for us to do well, and for need for people to be empowered, to be healed. There's a lot of trauma out there. There's a lot of mental health issues out there, and that, especially on the continent where we've not really been addressing these things, and we have made everything spiritual. For example, we would say it's the devil that's done this, or somebody in your house that is doing something, like,
Village people.
yes, that your village people are after you, and all of those things. And so, but if you have a trained population, if you had a trained people who know exactly what is happening, we can actually perform miracles. Like, we can actually heal people. How many times when people would say to us, look, that has changed my life. I got a letter the other day, and a text the other day, that she was telling me, she said, somebody had referred someone to me, a coach had referred someone to me who was dealing with trauma, and I do the therapeutic coaching. And so fast forward months later, this other the person who referred her to me emailed me and said, she got pregnant. She's so happy. That why that is important is because they've been trying to get pregnant for 2 years, and they had not been able to get pregnant. And but she went through the healing process, right? And right after the healing process, she got pregnant. So what and there's no magic to it. It's just that when you're in a state of trauma, parts of your systems are just not working. They go offline. And so if
Hmm.
once you do the work of healing and recovery, then things start just go back to working again. And so these are the kind of things that people don't know. And once you're trained, you begin to realize that ignorance is ignorance can cost you. Ignorance is costly.
Hmm.
Ignorance is costly. So what drives me is to empower people. What drives me is that we can eradicate trauma from our midst, from our communities. What drives me is that people should actually get a chance to live the life that they want to live authentically, and not a mirage of life or a pseudo life that trauma or chronic stress has imposed on them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's such a beauty, because this thing that you just mentioned, I remember during the outreach we had with the at the market in Ibadan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was this lady that just came out. Her eyes literally lit open when you talked about how you've been trying to conceive, it's taking time, and at the other, before you start saying that is one grandmother somewhere that has tied your womb, why don't you look at the possibility that how you're reacting or something within is what is causing this. And the way I was, there was just that awareness. And I know that some of them also came to meet us, for personal talk, and we had to give time to talk with them. So I really get that. I really get that drive. Now this brings us also down to the fact that mental health in Africa is considered, as in, when I was, doing one of my research at work, I realized that they've been calling mental health the silent crisis where Africa is concerned since 2012 or 2013, or even way before that. So how can, or just give us an insight into how training can really bridge that gap for
Okay.
affordable mental health care in Africa.
Absolutely. And that's what we're about. We're about affordable mental health care in Africa. And we're just starting with Nigeria right now. So it's affordable mental health for everyone so that everybody has access to it. The when we have a continent that has endured what Africa has endured, and we have to we one thing we can say is that we're resilient, right? We can say that we're resilient people because we keep bouncing back, we keep coming back. Nigeria right now has over 200 million people, right? And there's about 200 psychiatrists and maybe about 200 and something practicing psychologists. And so there's a dearth of specialists in this area. However, I think awareness is the first step. We just have just awareness. We need to let people know that what mental health is, what mental illness is, because those two things are different. Mental health and mental illness are two different things. People always collude them together. Okay, they're not. Mental health is your ability to be well. Mental health is your wellness. It's that you are emotionally well, psychologically well, socially well, all right, and spiritually well. That is what mental health is about, is that you're able to function as a citizen in your community and do well. So you're financially secure, you're able to contribute to humanity. That is what mental health is about. Mental illness is an illness. It's that there is a disorder, there's something going on. So we have the major depression, it could be mood disorders, it could be it could be schizophrenia, bipolar. It could be different types of things. It could be personality disorders. So there's a mental illness. But the most important thing is that everyone is impacted at some point, you know, with the chronic stress, for example, can lead to trauma. And so we just need to begin to bring awareness to it. And there's a lot of things happening in the space right now. I'm very happy with different people coming into the Nigeria, for example, and taking their places. We need to also collaborate together. There is room for everybody. There's room for everybody, right? There is room. There is no competition. Everybody, there is room for us, because this whole thing is just starting to take root in Nigeria. It's just beginning to take root in Nigeria and parts of Africa. So we need to then, number one, know that. So the first thing is awareness. The second thing then is training. We must train. And I'm talking about substantial training that empowers you to keep the principles, the ethical principles. Because some of the first ethical principle is beneficence and non-malfeasance. Okay, which means that you try to benefit those that you're working with and take care to do no harm. You will do harm if you are not trained. You would do harm if people come to you and you're trying to triage and you're trying to and you're trying to work beyond your scope of training. Does that make sense? So if you just had like a you took a mental health 101, or you took a anger management class or
Yes.
something, you are not a specialist. You have a certificate. You can do some things, but you can't. That kind of certificate, for example, is not has not empowered you to become a trauma specialist. Does that make sense? And
Yeah.
so it is important that we hold true to the principles and do no harm. When do no harm, do no harm. That is why we need to train. This first thing is we need to have an awareness. So let's talk about it. Let's in the on the media and churches and mosques everywhere. Let's talk about mental health. Number two, we need to start having trainings and train people not only for mental health, train people for crisis situations, train people for psychological first aid. So there's a lot of training that needs to go on in our area so that we can be empowered to do no harm and to be within this space where we're healing people.
Mm,
And when
mm,
we're healing people,
mm.
it means that you become the tool in the room. It's not so much all of the things that you've learned. Those things are good. But you also have to be somebody who is not going to bring risk to your people. So you have to know what you're doing, and you have to also take care of yourself. Does that make sense?
It does, and it rallies with one of the papers that was released very recently, talking about the Global Mental Health Day. Mental health in an unequal world, where they're looking at bringing on. Actually, they said non-specialists into the field. So, but right now, what we are saying is that to be able to bridge the affordable mental health care gap, we need to actually bring in non-medical non-medical health specialist on board, because I really found out that for our trauma care course, we reach out to HR professionals, we reach out to business owners and entrepreneurs, we reach out to community leaders, and essentially these guys are not health they're not health workers per se, but training them in the basics of trauma care, training them in the basics of mental health, trauma focused mental health first aid, will go a long way in them being interventionists in their community.
Absolutely.
Esther, there's something that you said, me and you were discussing. There was a particular question that you have for Doctor. Can you just ask her one of those questions I wanted coming from you, about the qualifications required? What made you and I were having that discussion. Can you ask Doctor about that?
I think Esther is frozen.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there she is.
Okay, so no, no, no. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
I
can.
can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, so the question is that many times people want to practice and mental care, mental trauma care and all of that, but they're thinking, okay, maybe I have to get a certificate in psychology first, or I have to take a course in one, maybe a certificate in a medicine around medicine, the medical field, before I can now begin to practice as a mental health caregiver. So, what do you say to such people who think they need a qualification before they can give mental health care to people?
Okay. All right. Okay, that's a good question. One of the things that we have to recognize is we just don't have enough trained trained specialists to do this work. There's not enough psychologists. There's not enough psychiatrists. There's not enough of us to be able to meet the needs in this country. And so that's why I love the whole idea of coaching, and so we've opened this up that people need to we can the way we have structured our training at jars is it's we have structured in such a way that you would come when by the time you leave, most of them are 4 or 5 weeks, and by the time you leave, you will have been well trained in that particular area of that you ascribe to. But so when we need to start training those coaches. So if you're a life coach, for example, it does not prepare you to be a mental health coach. So life coach does not mean you're a mental health coach. So you need to come get trained to become that. To become that, or a trauma coach. You need to become to get trained for that. If you are a leader in anywhere, so if you are a church leader, a women's leader, a youth leader, any kind of person in organizations, everybody needs to get trained. Because did you know that when your organization has a focus on mental wellness, that you actually do better. You do better physically. It is you. There's a better return on your investment. And so this is important for us because once the more people we can get trained, then that question that somebody had, John had the question as where and how to get help is pivotal. So that question is important because the what's happening now is it's difficult to know, who is doing what, and there are not enough people for the ones who need help. So once, if you're getting more people trained, then help could be readily available. I understand that most people love their pastors, for example. Like a lot of Nigerians are very religious, so they go to church, they go to their mosque, they go to these places. Well, why don't we get all of those faith leaders trained in in trauma care, for example, so that they know what they're doing when they are actually having
Counseling.
conversations with their people. So we can say, what your church is trauma informed, so you can get help over there. We can say that organization right there is trauma um, care trained, so you can get help over there. So the problem is that we don't have enough of it. And that is why we're trying to bridge that gap, bring that together so people are trained, and we can refer you. At JARS, we have over 70 people now that we have trained, or more, that we have trained. So
Thereabouts,
if you,
yes.
right, Bims, am I
Yeah,
correct?
yes,
Yeah,
thereabouts.
that we have trained, and that we're called trauma specialists. So if you need help, if you've been traumatized in any way, if you're struggling emotionally, psychologically anyway, you can reach out to us, and we will connect you with a trauma specialist who will actually help you. So that, John, that's the answer to your question.
Okay. So, John, I wanted to take your question, but Dr. Professor has taken that, and that answers it. Reach out to us, and we can connect you to a trauma specialist close to you, or someone that will be able to help you with whatsoever issues that you have. But of course, understand, if it is an emergency, please get yourself or the person to the nearest health facility, or the nearest medical personnel as close to the person as you can get. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. So, and Esther, to your question on requirements, like Doctor said, you do not need to have a medical degree, even though they are welcome, because our medical care workers also need to be trauma trained, so as not to go a step further in doing no harm. One of the things I've found out is that in there is the possibility of re-traumatization. Someone once said that living in Africa alone, daily living in Africa is traumatic. It is traumatic. We grow up traumatized, essentially. So simple, basic interventions, basic interactions with people are actually opportunities for re-traumatization for a lot of people. So getting trained is something that would help you in your daily interactions to avoid actually being a a trauma giver, to people. Yeah. All right. Now, talking about now getting into the care, getting into caregiving, as it were, based on the question that John asked. For those, for viewers listening in to us, and I mean, if someone says, I mean, we're talking about mental health challenge or crisis, we all know what mental illness is like. But then, how do I know I'm suffering from a mental health challenge? You know, what are the warning signs? What are some of the things that can readily tell me as a sufferer that, all right, there's something not kosher going on there?
All right. So we're talking about when you know that. How do you know that um, you are suffering from something, chronic stress, trauma, some mental health issue? The first thing is when things, when things are not going well. Okay. So here, when things are not going well with you. What I'm going to just try to do is give you some uh, symptoms that you should look out for, like some things that you should look out for. You see what I'm saying? And so
Yeah,
let you find yourself constantly yelling. You find yourself
that's a big
constantly
one.
yelling.
That's a
You're
big one.
always you're screaming at somebody. If you're not yelling at your at your house help, you're yelling at your driver. If you're not yelling at your driver, you're yelling at your husband, your wife. If you're not doing that, you're yelling at you're yelling in the market. You're just yelling at people. That is a good thing to tell you that you're hyper that you are operating on a hyper arousal level. Okay, so that means that there is an elevated response. You're operating in your sympathetic nervous system. Okay, and so which means that you are in the fight or flight zone. With that has come to tell you that you're not at ease, and that might be some form of trauma, some form of ill ill health for you. And so if you find that you are excessive paranoia, you worry all the time, you're constantly worrying about everything, or everything worries you, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you are anxious, you're finding and when we're anxious, we have physiological um, reactions. So you might find heart palpitating, you might find yourself having difficulty breathing, you might find yourself having aches all over your body. There's aches, you ache and you can't really understand why the aches are there. So you have like extreme fatigue and you're just tired and drained, and these things don't have any correlation or relationship with a medical issue. So you're not feeling all of this because there's a medical reason, right? It's just life. There's so many symptoms of it that we need to be aware of. We find that trauma has a way of changing you. Trauma has a way of of shifting your personality, your your sense of integrity, and you become somebody else. So when people are traumatized, what happens to them is that they are living in this hyperarousal state, and I call it you're constantly at alert, right? And so when you are there, you don't then want to mingle with people. That is when you start self isolating. That is when you start withdrawing from the things that you used to like to do. And when people experience trauma, one of the things that also happens is they develop negative coping mechanisms. Negative coping mechanisms. And this then they would think is their personality, not knowing that it
Mhm.
was the trauma that caused them to start behaving that way. So
That way.
you might say you don't trust people anymore. Because you've been wounded in some way. I don't trust people anymore. So that means that you're going to limit your relationships, and you might actually marry somebody that is that is not emotionally available, that is not emotionally available because you have developed that idea that you
The
can't
response.
trust. And so, and it goes on and on. There's dramatic changes in your eating patterns, in your sleeping patterns. There are so many other evidences that things are abnormal for you, but we don't address it. We just think it's life, and we just keep moving on. But the thing about trauma is, if you don't take care of it, it will mark your life for not, and it would become, you would live a life that is less than God intended you to have.
Hmm. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. I was having a conversation the other day with a friend, and then one of the things that came up was the fact that a lot of our responses, a lot of our responses to normal everyday living are actually trauma responses. You know, they're actually trauma responses. And this brings about a question. So where is that thin line? What is a trauma response and what is not? For instance, you mentioned about shouting, right? So how can you identify a trauma response? you know I
Okay.
guess that's where the training comes in.
I,
Or
I was going to say is, so I mean, there's, look, if you have been living in isolation all your life, you begin to think that isolation is all of life. So let me say that again. If you've been living in isolation all your life, you're going to think that isolation is all of life. So sometimes it's difficult for anyone to identify. It's difficult for anyone to even know what it is, because the maladaptive systems that we live in seem normal.
mm,
Okay. And
yeah.
so you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know until you venture outside of your space to learn more. You're going to think your space is all there is, which is why developmental trauma is so egregious. That is trauma from when in childhood is so egregious, because a lot of children are being abused. In the United States alone, there are about 3 million children annually that have been that come to the attention of, that being reported as being abused in every way. 3 million, and those are the ones that were reported. So in Nigeria, we don't have the figures for that in Nigeria, but I guarantee you it's a lot. It's a lot, And so the number one public health issue in the world is developmental abuse. Okay, developmental trauma. It is number one. Why? Because children are being abused, and when you're a child, you don't know that it's you don't even know that it's abuse. You don't have a name for it. You don't have the vocabulary for it, right? So how can I change something I'm not even? And so those children grow up to
Aware
be
of.
adults. Those children grow up to be adults, right? And so you just don't know. So how do you know? Is you learn more, you get help, you listen to shows like this that we're trying to help you, we're trying to train you, that these are the symptoms. If some of the things that I listed is happening to you, then you need to reach out and get help.
Wow.
This, before you ask me the next question, I just want to I want to talk to Olayemi here. Olayemi is
Okay.
sitting here quietly. Olayemi is our tech guy. So Olayemi helps us in the program, our trauma informed program, and he is the one that can train you in how to actually put your mental health or your trauma specialist uh, business online. So Olayemi, just can you just share with the population, that our audience, can you share like two things that they need to do if you want to be successful trauma informed coach, what are two things they have to do to get themselves online and to market themselves?
Okay.
He doesn't like to talk, so I'm putting him on the spot.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Okay, so basically, what doctor was asking me to do was just to brief us what digital marketing is all about, and just to give true insights on how to take your business online. And believe me, before you can actually take your business online, you should all know what digital marketing is all about. And briefly, so I will just put it in this way that digital marketing is the process or the marketing mechanism that helps you promote your business online with the use of digital media. It can either be your laptop or it can be your mobile phone. There are different tools where you can use to put your business online. You can promote your business through social media, which we all popularly know, such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and so forth. Um, this evening, let me just run us through basic things we need to do to put our business online.
Okay,
Okay,
go
so
ahead.
firstly, when you are thinking of putting your business online, first, you don't just go online and just think of a product first. The first thing you should look around you is look for a problem you think you can solve. Because
Okay,
if you just fell in love with your product and you just put it online, people might not buy it. But first thing you need to do is look around you, look for one problem or the other that you see people around you are facing. I believe you have to do some research, which, if time permits me later in the future, I will share more insight on that. So you have to look around you, search within your community online, and look for a problem you think, okay, I have a solution to this problem. So once you find this problem, the next thing for you to do is now develop a solution to that problem. Getting your solution ready, the next step for you is have a communication with your audience. That's your prospects, the people you
hmm,
think, yes, I have this solution for you. I can render this solution for your to your problem, and you have to talk about the product and how it will benefit the your user, and you have to make an offer. You give them an offer, something you think they can afford, because there's no point in bringing out products where you know the people you are trying to sell to they can't afford it, which I believe why Jazz Education Institute brought down their training price so that each and every one of us in the community we have access to these trainings.
wow.
I think the next thing to do is
Wait, you
get a
already said
website.
two now.
Okay, so I just think I'm
You're in the flow.
experienced.
Is in the flow already.
I'm in the flow already. So I'm just gonna drop this because it's one of the most important of all. You must have a website where people can, because you are taking your business online, and it's through your website that your audience will definitely have access to you. So apart from promoting your business on social media, you need to have a website that says more about you, so people can read more about you before they even contact you. So that will really help you even when you are sleeping, when you are away, people will still have access to your office. And example is jazzeducation.com. If you go on www.jazzeducation.com, you see more info on what the organization is all about and what we have to offer you. So I think that should be all from me this evening.
All right, Alayemi, well done, well done,
Thank
well done.
you.
Good job, good job. And so what I heard is that what you're saying is you should be solving a need. You must have a solution to a problem, which is one of the things that we're doing. We found a problem and we have a solution. We have a solution to it. So you have a solution to the problem. You need to offer good prices, and you need to make sure you engage yourself on via a website. And so, if any one of you you're in the field of mental health, this is what this program is about, and you live in and you're in Africa, please contact Olayemi, and if you want him to help you, with your websites and digital marketing, it can serve as a consultant. I'm not saying that it's going to build your stuff for you, but it can be a consultant for you, because we keep him quite busy here at Jars. Well done, Olayemi. Thank you for that. I also want to bring in Esther. Esther. I always say that you're our pulse on the younger generation. And so let me ask you this: How is mental health? Because you go to universities for us. What is your title again? What is your title?
Community.
A
Community coordinator. I
community,
don't know
yeah,
the title.
community
Okay.
liaison officer.
Thank you. So, Esther is our community coordinator, and so what when you go out, and we're talking about young people here, what are their ideas about mental health, and how do they feel about that? What are their thoughts about mental health?
Okay, for the young ones, unlike I think we have shared about that, how in the past when someone says mental health, we just classify it as madness. That's all it
Mm,
is. This person is mental, you know. But in the younger generation, we have people who are beginning to find out, okay, oh, I want to be aware of what I think about who I am. Do I feel better? Do I feel great? But then they're also tilting to the other side of the pendulum of every time they say mental health, all they think about is depression, suicide, that's all. But mental health is much more than that. And so, yes, for the younger ones, we are much more aware, so to say, about mental health and mental illness and every other thing that surrounds it. But there still needs to be more work done on trying to help people understand that not every kind of mental illness is just or trauma reaction is depression and suicide. There are other things that are not as glaring as depression and suicide that also affect people mentally. You mentioned earlier about just raising your voice, and I was laughing because I had an experience on my way back home today. I was in the bus, and then from nowhere, this bus conductor just decided to raise his voice at me, and there was that temptation to just get back. Why would you talk to me like that? But realizing that I'm only going to raise my own stress level, going to raise his own stress level, and the stress level of everybody else in the bus, causing them to be affected also mentally. That's one thing that makes this journey into being aware of a mental health very interesting.
wow. Where did you practice? You practice self-control, emotional regulation there. You're like, I'm not going to add to the stress. If you know that 1 in 3, 1 in 4 is dealing with some kind of mental health issue, or kind of what some one kind of trauma, then you have to give grace to people. So if it's hysterical, it is historical. So when somebody is acting out of character, or they are overreacting to something, if they're overreacting to something, it's because there is trauma behind it. It's because there's a history behind it. And if we know that as a people, that when somebody is doing that for you, you then use your own skills to emotionally regulate yourself, hold your peace, and not add to the trauma, and not add to what is going on out there. So these are some of, I believe that if we can begin to train, and we can begin to and we can be beginning to do prevention and awareness, and we're doing this on large scales. So we're calling on governments and state governments to really incorporate mental health into, and mental health policies and mental health legislations into within your state, because it has a high correlation to everything else. People who are mentally well do better in school. People who are mentally well do better at work. People who are mentally well do better in their marriages. People who are mentally well do better everywhere. So why would we not spend money on that? Why would we not, gather around this and say, okay, this is the way we're going to go. We're going to write legislations that is going to support this mental health policies here. I mean, Lagos State is doing a good job in that, because I read the mental health policy bill, and it is outstanding. It is really good. It covers everything from awareness. It covers to prevent, and they're not paying me to say this, by the way. I have nothing with this. Nothing. So it's the truth. They covered awareness, mental health awareness. They covered prevention. They covered training. They covered illnesses, and they covered what is it? Working with NGOs, and it was complete. It was complete. I've read another one from another state, which I'm not going to mention, that was incomplete. That particular mental health policy did not focus on anything but mental illness, and did not say anything about anything else. So I want state governors and mental health commissioners and mental health mental health commissioners in the state and ministers of health. They need to begin to address this in Nigeria, so that we can move forward together, and we can move forward together well. All right, that's it. Bims.
Okay, right. I'm wondering, do we still have time for
No.
questions? Okay, now what I want to do is, for everyone on the call, for everyone who tuned in, I'm going to post a link to the replay of our forgiveness clinic. Forgiveness is one of the self care, self healing tools that you can use to triage you So we're giving that to you as a gift. And then in the description of this, you would also, I mean, what Olayemi said, once you get to our website, you would find a link to all the trainings that are available to you in our institute. There's a link there. You can go there. But right now, let me quickly just post the link in the comments to our forgiveness clinic. The feedback from that has been tremendous and awesome. Yeah, so that is the link. Please go on there. If you can see it, please go on there and get it out, get it done, watch it, and just take a moment and breathe. Take a
Right.
moment and breathe. Any last words, Dr. Marino?
All right. So I'm glad we had this session. I think we can do something like this once in a while, where we just basically gather around. I'm glad to have all of you here. Bims, I'm glad that you're here with me, and you're doing a phenomenal job over there when I'm not there. You're whether I'm there or not, you're doing well. So, Olayemi, I have faith in you that you can speak in public, and here you are doing it. Well done, well done, well done. And Esther, well done.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing today with me, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.
All right.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye, ma'am.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.